The school hallway was almost empty. The morning bell had just rung, loud and sharp, echoing off the tall walls. Students hurried to their classrooms, shoes tapping quickly on the floor. In the middle of this rush stood a little girl named Lina. She pressed her hands hard against her ears, her face tight with fear. The noise was too much for her. Lina was only 6 years old, and she did not like sudden sounds. The ringing bell felt like a storm in her head. She crouched down near the wall, shaking, her eyes full of tears. Children passed by, some staring, some whispering, but no one stopped. They were late for class and didn't know what to do. Just then, an old cleaning cart rolled around the corner. It belonged to Samir, the school janitor. Samir had been working in the building for many years. His uniform was worn, his shoes old, but his smile was always warm. He was the kind of man who noticed small things that others ignored. Samir saw Lina sitting on the floor, trembling. He did not rush toward her or call out loudly. Instead, he stopped a few steps away, leaned down slightly, and spoke in a soft voice. "Are you okay, little one?" he asked gently. But Lina did not answer. She was too frightened to hear words. Samir knew that talking might not help right now. He thought for a moment, then reached into his pocket. He always carried a tiny bottle of bubbles just in case he met a sad child during the day. Without saying anything more, Samir opened the bottle, dipped the wand, and blew. Clear, shiny bubbles floated out and danced in the hallway light. They moved slowly, spinning colors of blue and gold. Lina's tears stopped for a second. She looked up. Another breath from Samir sent more bubbles into the air. They drifted above Lina's head and around her small shoulders. One bubble landed on her sleeve and popped with a soft tick sound. Lina blinked, her eyes wide with wonder. Samir smiled but did not speak. He sat down on the floor, not too close, and blew another handful of bubbles. Some floated high, some low. Lina slowly reached out with one hand and touched a bubble before it vanished. A tiny smile appeared on her face. The hallway was quiet now except for the faint sound of the bubbles popping. Students had gone to their classes, and only the soft hum of the building could be heard. Far away, at the end of the hallway, a tall man stood watching. He was wearing a dark suit and shiny shoes. His name was Omar. He was Lina's father, though Samir did not know that. Omar was a very rich man who rarely had time to visit the school. But today he had come early, hoping to surprise his daughter. What he saw surprised him instead. Lina, who often hid from strangers, was calm with this old janitor. Omar stayed quiet, not wanting to disturb the moment. Samir blew another long breath. Bubbles floated all around. Lina giggled softly now, reaching for them, her fear almost gone. She even stood up slowly, wiping her eyes. Samir gave her the wand to try. She dipped it clumsily and blew, making one weak bubble that wobbled and fell. She laughed harder. Samir chuckled too, helping her hold the wand the right way. "Just like that," he whispered, still gentle. A teacher walked by, glancing at the two in surprise. "Come on, Lina," the teacher said briskly, "you'll be late for class." But Lina did not cry this time. She simply looked at Samir as if asking if it was okay to go. Samir nodded kindly. "Go on now," he said in a soft tone. "The bubbles will wait for you later." Lina smiled shyly, gave back the wand, and walked to class holding the teacher's hand. She turned once to wave at Samir, a tiny wave full of trust. Samir waved back, then packed his bubble bottle carefully in his pocket and pushed his cart away. At the end of the hall, Omar stepped aside so no one noticed him. His heart was full of questions. Who was this man who had calmed his daughter so easily? Lina usually needed long minutes, sometimes hours, to recover from a loud sound. Yet here she was, smiling after only a few bubbles. Samir didn't see Omar. He was already thinking about the next job, fixing a leaky sink in the bathroom. To him, it was nothing special. He had simply helped a child feel better, as he always tried to do. But to Omar, it was something rare and precious. As Samir disappeared around the corner, Omar's eyes stayed on the now empty hallway. He decided he needed to learn more about this quiet janitor who had done what no expensive therapist had ever managed: calm his daughter with nothing but patience and a little bottle of bubbles. The next morning, Samir was cleaning near the library when he saw Lina again. She was standing alone in the corner, holding her school bag close to her chest. The hallway was busy, filled with children rushing to class, but Lina didn't move. Her eyes looked worried. Samir walked slowly toward her, pushing his cart. He did not speak right away. He knew sudden words might scare her. When he reached her side, he smiled kindly and took out his small bottle of bubbles again. He opened it and blew softly. Shiny bubbles floated through the air, spinning in the sunlight from a nearby window. Lina's worried eyes followed them. "Good morning," Samir said quietly, his voice calm like still water. "Do you want to try again?" Lina nodded slowly. Samir held out the wand, and she dipped it into the bubble liquid. Her little hands trembled, but she blew a tiny bubble that floated just long enough to make her giggle. Samir's heart warmed. He loved seeing that shy smile. "Perfect," he whispered. "You are better than me now." From a distance, someone was watching. Omar had returned to the school earlier than usual, curious about the old janitor who had calmed his daughter the day before. He stood near the office door, out of sight, his eyes fixed on Lina and Samir. Lina blew another bubble and clapped her hands when it popped. Samir laughed softly and blew a whole stream of bubbles in return, filling the hallway with tiny rainbows. The sound of popping bubbles covered the noise of rushing feet and slamming doors. Ahmed, the school principal, passed by quickly. He saw Samir kneeling beside Lina and frowned slightly. "Samir, aren't you supposed to be fixing the science lab sink?" he said. "I'll be there soon," Samir answered politely. "Just helping her calm down." Ahmed sighed and walked off without another word. Omar noticed this. The principal seemed in a hurry, too busy to see the quiet magic happening before his eyes. After a few minutes, Lina's teacher arrived. "Lina, it's time for class," she said gently. To everyone's surprise, Lina gave the bubble wand back to Samir without tears or fear. She walked with her teacher calmly, looking back once to wave. Samir waved back, smiling as she disappeared into the classroom. When Samir stood up to leave, he did not notice Omar moving closer. Omar remained quiet, blending in as parents sometimes did when visiting, wearing a serious face. He had seen enough to know this wasn't luck. This man truly understood his daughter. Later that day, Samir was in the cafeteria repairing a loose chair when Ahmed walked in with Omar. "Mr. Omar is here to check on his daughter," Ahmed said. "He asked about you." Samir looked up, surprised. "About me? Did something happen?" Omar stepped forward, offering his hand. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said in a warm voice. "I saw what you did this morning. You have a way with Lina." Samir shook his hand firmly but humbly. "Oh, it was nothing. Just a little fun to make her smile." "It was not nothing," Omar replied, his eyes serious. "She usually does not calm down so quickly." Samir scratched his head. "Sometimes children just need patience. That's all." Ahmed quickly added, "Samir is very friendly with the kids, though of course he's just the janitor." He gave a small laugh, but Omar didn't laugh at all. "Just the janitor?" Omar repeated softly, almost to himself. He looked at Samir again. "You carry bubbles with you every day?" Samir nodded. "Yes. You never know when a child might need them." Omar smiled faintly. "Not many people think like that." Samir went back to work after they left, brushing off the meeting as nothing special. To him, helping a child was part of life. He did not need thanks or attention. But to Omar, it meant something much deeper. He walked through the school thinking about how his wealth had given Lina the best doctors, teachers, and toys, yet none of them had reached her heart as easily as this humble man with a bottle of bubbles. The next morning, Samir again found Lina waiting in the hallway. She looked for him first thing, her eyes bright. Samir knelt down and said, "Ready for more bubbles?" She nodded eagerly. Omar stood far away, watching again, his heart filled with quiet amazement. Lina giggled as bubbles floated everywhere. Other children passing by started to laugh too, stopping to pop them. In a few minutes, the whole hallway felt lighter and happier, though no one quite knew why. Omar whispered to himself, "This man, he's special." Samir, wiping a bit of soap from his hands, didn't hear those words. To him, it was just another small morning moment, but to Omar, it was the beginning of something he could not ignore. The following week, Omar decided not to stay in the shadows anymore. He wanted to meet this janitor properly, not just watch him from a distance. But first, he wanted to understand how Lina truly felt. Every morning, Samir continued his quiet routine. He cleaned the floors, wiped desks, and fixed broken door handles. But whenever he saw Lina standing nervously in the hallway, he stopped his work without a second thought. The bubbles came out, and her worried eyes lit up every time. Lina began to look for him every morning. She no longer froze when the bell rang. Instead, she held her hands to her ears for only a moment before smiling when Samir appeared. He never asked her to talk, never pushed her to act normal. He just blew bubbles, sometimes letting her hold the wand, sometimes letting her watch in silence. One afternoon, Omar arrived earlier than expected to pick up Lina. He stood near the office door again, watching. He saw something that touched him deeply. Lina, who usually avoided strangers, quietly reached out and took Samir's hand for a brief second before walking to class. It was not a big gesture, but Omar knew how rare it was for his daughter to do that. Later that day, Omar went to see Ahmed, the school principal. "Who is that man who cleans the hallways?" Omar asked. "That's Samir," Ahmed replied quickly. "He's been here for years. Good worker, very polite." "Why do you ask?" "I've seen him calm Lina," Omar said slowly. "How does he do it?" Ahmed shrugged. "Oh, you know kids. Sometimes they just like friendly faces. But of course, he's only the janitor. Nothing more." The words "only the janitor" made Omar pause. How easily people looked past someone who did something important. The next morning, Omar came again, this time walking straight to Samir while he was polishing the main hallway floor. "Good morning," Omar said warmly. Samir looked up, surprised. "Good morning, sir. Can I help you?" "You've already helped me," Omar replied with a smile. "You've helped my daughter, Lina." Samir wiped his hands on a cloth and stood. "Oh, you must be her father. She's a lovely child." Omar nodded. "I've seen how patient you are with her." "Thank you." "It's nothing," Samir said humbly. "Children just need kindness and time. That's all." Omar studied him for a moment. Samir's clothes were clean but worn. His shoes had been repaired many times. There was no sign of wealth or pride in this man, only simple honesty. "I wanted to offer you something," Omar said, pulling out an envelope. "Just a small token of thanks." Samir shook his head immediately. "No, sir. Please. I don't help children for money." Omar pressed gently. "It's not about payment. It's appreciation." But Samir still refused. "Kindness is free. If you put a price on it, it stops being kindness." Just then, Lina came skipping around the corner with her teacher. When she saw Samir, she ran to him without hesitation. She hugged his leg tightly, something she almost never did with anyone but her family. Samir smiled and patted her head softly. "Hello, little one," he said. "Did you have a good class?" Lina nodded shyly, then looked at Omar and pointed at Samir as if to say, "This is my friend." Omar's heart swelled at the sight. He had spent so much on therapies, special toys, and programs, yet this man with old shoes and a bubble wand had connected with his daughter in a way no one else had. After Lina went back to class, Omar turned to Samir again. "You have a gift," he said quietly. Samir smiled but shook his head. "No, sir. I just remember what it's like to be small and scared. Sometimes children just need someone who understands." When Samir returned to work, Omar stayed behind for a long moment, thinking. He knew he couldn't just walk away from this. Something told him this man was meant to be more than a janitor in Lina's life. That evening, Omar sat in his car outside his large office tower, staring at the city lights. He thought about Samir's simple words, "Kindness is free." Omar had built companies, earned wealth, and met powerful people, but how many of them carried bubbles in their pockets just to make a child smile? He decided he needed to speak with Samir again. Not as a rich man handing out money, but as a father who needed help. The next day would be different. Omar would not stand far away this time. He would sit down with Samir, hear his story, and find out why this humble man seemed to understand his daughter better than anyone else. The next morning, Samir arrived at school earlier than usual. He liked quiet mornings when the halls were empty, and only the hum of the lights kept him company. He filled his mop bucket, checked his tools, and made sure his little bottle of bubbles was in his pocket. As he was wiping a classroom window, he heard light footsteps behind him. It was Lina, holding her bag close, looking around for him. "You're early today," Samir said softly. "Want to help me clean?" Lina nodded shyly. He handed her a small cloth and pointed to a low table. She wiped it carefully, and Samir smiled. "Perfect job. Better than me." Before the bell rang, Samir blew a few bubbles for her. Lina giggled and tried to catch them. The soft sound of her laugh filled the empty hall. From across the hall, Omar stood watching again. He had planned to meet Samir after school, but seeing this moment reminded him why he needed to talk to the man. Lina looked happy, truly happy, something Omar rarely saw outside their home. Later that day, while Samir was repairing a broken chair in the cafeteria, Omar walked in quietly. "Do you always carry bubbles with you?" Omar asked. Samir looked up, surprised but smiling. "Yes, sir. Children like bubbles. They're small, simple, and make people forget their worries for a moment." "Why do you care so much?" Omar asked gently. "Most people just do their work and leave." Samir thought for a moment before answering. "When I was young, I had a little sister. She didn't like loud sounds, just like Lina. People didn't understand her. I learned to help her feel safe, with patience, with little things that made her smile. She passed away when she was still small. Since then, I try to help children whenever I can. Maybe it's my way to remember her." Omar's expression softened. "I see. You are not just kind. You understand." Samir shook his head. "I'm no expert. I just try to listen without words. Children can tell when you really care." At that moment, Ahmed, the principal, walked in and saw Omar speaking to Samir. "Oh, Mr. Omar. I didn't know you were here," Ahmed said quickly. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine," Omar replied calmly. "I'm just talking with Samir." Ahmed looked slightly confused. "Ah, yes. Well, Samir does good work. Always keeps the school clean. Then he hurried away to another meeting, leaving Omar and Samir alone again. Omar sat down on one of the cafeteria benches. Samir, I want to ask you something personal. Would you consider spending more time with Lina? Not just in the hallways, maybe after school. Samir hesitated. Sir, I'm just a janitor. Lina has teachers, therapists, people who know more than me. Omar shook his head. Those people have training. But you have something they don't, a natural gift. My daughter trusts you. Samir stayed quiet for a long moment, then said, if it's for Lina, I will help. But I can't leave the school. The children here know me. Some of them need a friend too. Omar smiled slightly. You are a rare man, Samir. Most people would have asked for money. I don't need money to do what's right, Samir said simply. That afternoon, Samir kept working as usual, fixing door hinges and sweeping the playground, but word spread among teachers that the billionaire father had been speaking with the janitor. Some whispered, wondering why Omar cared so much about him. Meanwhile, Lina continued to search for Samir every morning. She began to carry her own tiny bubble wand in her pocket. When Samir saw it, he chuckled. Ah, so you're the bubble master now. Lina giggled and blew bubbles toward him, her small face shining with joy. One day, other children passing by joined in, popping the bubbles. The hallway, usually noisy and tense, became a place of laughter for a few minutes. Teachers looked out of their classrooms, surprised at the change. Samir never looked for praise. He just kept doing his quiet work, cleaning, fixing, and carrying small kindness in his pocket. But Omar watched every detail. He noticed how Samir treated every child with the same patience, whether rich or poor, shy or loud. That evening, Omar made a decision. He would invite Samir to his home, not as a worker, but as a guest. He wanted to know more about this man who had touched his daughter's heart. The next day after school, Omar waited near the main gate with Lina by his side. Lina held her father's hand but kept glancing around, clearly looking for someone else. When she finally spotted Samir pushing his cleaning cart, her face brightened. She pulled her hand free and ran toward him. Samir smiled warmly. Hello, little one, he said softly. Did you have a good day? Lina nodded quickly and pointed at the bubble bottle in Samir's pocket. Omar walked up behind her. Samir, he said politely, I was hoping you could join us for dinner tonight. Lina would love it. Samir looked surprised. Dinner? Sir, I'm just a janitor. I'm not used to fine places. Omar chuckled. It's not about fine places. It's about Lina. She wants her friend there. Please say yes. Samir hesitated but finally agreed. If it will make her happy, I will come. That evening, Samir arrived at Omar's house. It was not just a house, it was a mansion with high gates and tall windows glowing in the sunset. Samir wore his cleanest shirt, though it was still simple and worn. He felt a little nervous as a servant led him inside. Lina ran to greet him at the door, holding her tiny bubble wand. She blew a bubble and clapped when it floated high toward the ceiling. Samir laughed. You're getting better every day, he said, kneeling to her level. Omar welcomed him inside. The dining room was bright and full of silver and glass. Samir looked around awkwardly, feeling out of place among such wealth. Omar noticed this and said kindly, Relax, Samir. This is just a table and food. You're our guest. During dinner, Lina stayed close to Samir instead of sitting quietly as she usually did. She showed him her drawings and even whispered a few words to him, something she rarely did with anyone outside the family. Omar watched in amazement, trying not to interrupt. You have a special way with her, Omar said after a while. May I ask, how did you learn to understand children so well? Samir set down his fork, his eyes gentle. It's not learning, sir. It's remembering. When I was young, I helped my little sister every day. She was shy, like Lina. She didn't speak much, but I learned how to listen without words. After she passed away, I just kept helping other children whenever I could. Lina leaned against Samir's arm while he spoke. Omar saw how comfortable she was and felt a deep gratitude. Samir, Omar said slowly, I want to make you an offer. I'd like you to spend more time with Lina. Not as a worker, but as someone who can help her feel safe and grow stronger. I can pay you well, far more than the school ever could. Samir shook his head firmly. Sir, I don't help children for money. I help because it is right. If you pay me too much, it will feel like a job, not kindness. Omar smiled faintly. Then think of it as a way to give you more time with Lina and maybe help other children too. I'm willing to do something for the school as well. I can improve classrooms, build a quiet room for children like Lina. What do you think? Samir thought carefully. If you do this, do it for all the children, not just Lina. Every child deserves a calm place to feel safe. That's exactly why I admire you, Omar said softly. You think of everyone, not just yourself. After dinner, Lina brought Samir her favorite toy, a small stuffed bear, and placed it in his hands. It was her way of saying thank you. Samir knelt down and said, Take care of your bear. I'll see you tomorrow at school, all right? Lina nodded and gave him a shy hug. As Samir left the mansion that night, Omar stood by the door watching him go. The man walked with slow, steady steps, carrying no pride, no greed, only a heart full of quiet kindness. Inside the house, Omar whispered to himself, This man is different. I must make sure he stays in Lina's life. Samir walked home to his small apartment, thinking about the evening. He wasn't sure what to say to Omar's offer yet, but one thing was clear: Lina trusted him completely, and that meant more to him than anything. The evening sky over the city glowed orange as the sun dipped lower. Kareem walked home with slow steps, his mop bucket and broom rattling in his old cart. His thoughts were not on his tired back or his small apartment. They were on little Amina, the girl whose laugh had filled the school hallway like music. He remembered how her eyes had lit up when she saw the bubbles. A single toy, bought from a corner shop, had opened a door to her heart. Kareem never thought such a simple thing could matter so much. When he reached his apartment, Kareem sat on the small wooden chair near the window. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Miss Sophia, Amina's teacher. Mr. Kareem, Amina keeps talking about you. She wants to see you tomorrow again. Kareem smiled, a rare, deep smile. He typed back slowly, Of course. I will be there. What Kareem didn't know was that someone else was watching too. The next morning, Kareem arrived at the school early as usual. The hall smelled of cleaning soap and fresh paint. He started polishing the floors when he heard light footsteps. Amina ran down the hallway, holding something small in her hand. Kareem. Look, she said, showing him a tiny bottle of bubbles. You brought your own, Kareem said, surprised. She nodded. Mama bought it? Can we play? He looked around to make sure no one minded. Yes, little one. But only for a few minutes. I have work. They played in the hallway, laughing softly as the bubbles floated and popped. Amina clapped her hands every time a bubble landed on Kareem's cap. For a moment, the school didn't feel like a place of rules and noise. It felt like magic. But they didn't know someone was watching from the far end of the hall. A tall man in a dark suit stood silently, his face calm but his eyes sharp. This was Rashid, Amina's father. He had arrived unannounced to check on his daughter. Being a billionaire, Rashid had little time to visit the school. But today, something made him come early. He had expected to see teachers, maybe other children. Instead, he saw the janitor, a man with worn shoes and tired eyes, kneeling to blow bubbles with his daughter. And Amina looked happy. Really happy. Rashid's chest tightened. His daughter rarely smiled like that, even at home. The maids and nannies cared for her, but none had broken through her silence like this. Miss Sophia appeared, surprised to see Rashid. "Sir, I didn't know you were coming." "I wanted to see Amina," Rashid said quietly, still watching Kareem. "Who is that man?" "That's Kareem, our janitor," Sophia replied. "He's kind. Amina seems to trust him." Rashid said nothing more. But his mind was busy. Why did a man with no wealth or power succeed where experts and expensive tutors failed? Later that day, after the children went to class, Rashid waited in the hallway until Kareem finished mopping. "Excuse me," Rashid said in a deep voice. Kareem turned and froze. He recognized Rashid from news articles and magazines. "Sir, do you need help finding someone?" "I'm looking at him," Rashid said. "You're Kareem, right?" "Yes, sir," Kareem said carefully. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," Rashid replied. "Quite the opposite. My daughter seems happy with you." Kareem lowered his eyes. "She's a sweet child. I just treat her like she matters." Those words hit Rashid harder than expected. He realized how often he was too busy to even sit with Amina. "Tell me something," Rashid said. "Why do you spend time with her? You're not paid for that." Kareem looked puzzled. "Because she needed someone. Isn't that enough?" Rashid had no answer. He had spent his life thinking everything had a price. But this man, who had so little, gave his time freely. That evening, Rashid sat in his grand office on the top floor of his company's building. The city lights glittered below. Yet his mind stayed on one image: his daughter laughing with the janitor. He called his assistant. "Find out everything about Kareem. Where he lives, his family, his past. I want to know." The assistant asked, "Should I check if there are any problems?" "No," Rashid said softly. I just need to understand him." Meanwhile, Kareem was eating simple bread and tea at his table, unaware that his life was about to change. The next morning at school, Amina waited at the gate with her bubble bottle, scanning for Kareem. When she saw him, she ran and hugged his leg. "You came again," she said. "Of course," Kareem smiled. "I promised, didn't I?" Behind them, Rashid watched silently from his car. His heart warmed but also filled with questions. Why did his daughter trust this man so deeply? And what was he going to do about it? Rashid decided, he had to speak with Kareem again, but this time, not just as a father. As a man who wanted to know what true kindness looked like. The sun was just rising when Kareem arrived at school. He pushed his cleaning cart slowly, enjoying the quiet before the children arrived. But today felt different. He had a small excitement in his chest he could not explain. When he reached the hallway, he saw Lina waiting near the window, holding her little bubble wand tightly. Her eyes lit up when she spotted him. She ran toward him and held his hand, giggling. "Good morning," Kareem said softly. "Ready for some bubbles?" "Yes," Lina exclaimed. Before he could blow the first bubble, a familiar figure appeared at the end of the hallway. Rashid, Lina's father, stepped forward. This time, he did not hide. He walked slowly, smiling warmly, and stopped a few steps away from them. "Good morning, Kareem," Rashid said gently. Kareem looked at him, surprised but respectful. "Good morning, sir. I wanted to speak with you," Rashid said. "Not as a father, but as someone who has seen your kindness. You've helped Lina in ways I never could. And I want to thank you properly." Kareem shook his head. "Sir, I only do what is right. I don't need thanks. Rashid smiled. I know. That's what makes it so rare. But I would like to offer you a place in our home, not as an employee, but as someone who can spend time with Lina and help her grow. Your patience and love mean more than any money can. Kareem's eyes widened slightly. He had never imagined such an offer. I don't know what to say, sir. I help children because they need me, not for rewards. I understand, Rashid replied. But I also want to make sure Lina has someone she trusts. And if you accept, I want to support you in any way you need, both for Lina and for other children who might need help. At that moment, Lina ran ahead and hugged Kareem's leg tightly. Please, Kareem, she said softly, looking up at him with big hopeful eyes. Kareem knelt down, smiling. Well, for you, Lina, I think I can try. Rashid nodded, his eyes misty. He felt a deep gratitude he could not put into words. Seeing his daughter trust someone so completely made him realize the power of simple kindness. The next few weeks were filled with small, happy moments. Kareem began spending time with Lina at her home, reading books together, drawing, and blowing bubbles in the garden. Lina laughed more freely than ever before. Rashid watched quietly, sometimes joining in the activities, sometimes letting Kareem guide her. He noticed how Lina's confidence grew. She began speaking in sentences more clearly, smiling spontaneously, and even trying new things with a brave heart. At school, Kareem continued his work as janitor. He still cleaned floors, fixed doors, and mopped classrooms. But now, he carried an extra lightness in his heart. He knew Lina was safe and happy, and that made every tired muscle and aching back worth it. One morning, as Kareem blew bubbles for a group of children in the school hallway, Lina ran to him with her wand. Together, they created a small flurry of floating colors. The children laughed and clapped, popping bubbles everywhere. Kareem watched their joy quietly, feeling fulfilled. Rashid appeared at the end of the hall, smiling quietly. He did not need to say anything. The scene said it all. The janitor with worn shoes and humble hands had changed his daughter's world, and in a small way, his own too. Later that evening, Rashid invited Kareem to sit in his office. The walls were lined with books and pictures of Lina as a baby. Rashid spoke softly. Kareem, I want to do something for your school, he said. You have shown me that children need more than books and toys. They need spaces where they feel safe, calm, and free. I want to fund a quiet room, and special play areas for all children, not just Lina. Kareem felt tears prick his eyes. Thank you, sir. That would help so many children. No, Kareem, Rashid said firmly. Thank you. You taught me that true kindness cannot be bought. And I want to share that lesson with others. From that day, the school changed. Children had spaces where they could relax, read quietly, or play safely. Lina's confidence blossomed, and she laughed more than ever. She continued to carry her tiny bubble wand everywhere, always ready for a moment of magic with Kareem. And Kareem? He continued to be humble, patient, and gentle. Though he received respect and gratitude from Rashid, he never changed his heart. He remained a quiet hero, showing that small acts of kindness could have the biggest impact. One sunny afternoon, Kareem stood in the schoolyard, blowing bubbles. Lina ran among them, popping each one with a giggle. Rashid watched from a distance, smiling proudly. Kareem looked around at the children laughing, the bubbles sparkling in the sunlight, and thought quietly to himself, sometimes, the simplest things, patience, understanding, and care, are enough to change a life. And in that moment, he knew that Lina, Rashid, and all the children he had touched would always remember the quiet janitor who cared enough to blow bubbles when the world was too loud.